which is incredible. We've also been doing large fermentation since the 70s. We started doing ethanol in 1978, and I think today we actually have the largest fermentation capacity in North America. And a lot of that capacity is not being utilized to unlock some of these new technologies. And so there again, we're like, we can bring a really interesting capability to this industry and fill some gaps where capacity has not been available historically. But I think back to your point of 80 years, and this is what was really interesting. When we set up this business, we kind of assessed what were all of ADM's capabilities out there in the market. We did kind of a global assessment. We realized we had 200 people working in R&D on fermentation, scale up, scale down, strain development, and DSP optimization. And in that alone is, 30, 40 times the horsepower of many of these startup technologies who are trying to get their strains to market. And so we're like, what an amazing capability that we could bring to bear. Two, we have not only the feedstock, but we've been doubling down on our regenerative agriculture. So this regen ag is actually allowing us to bring the best carbon score dextrose to the market. So it's not only low cost because of the scale and size, but it's also enabling our customers or our technology partners to meet their carbon score needs or their carbon score targets. And finally, we have this broad go-to-market where our history has been to how do we take agriculture inputs and use them as building blocks to be able to create the next ingredients and materials that go into food, fuel, industrial, et cetera. And precision fermentation is just the next generation and version of that. So it's really next generation commodities. It's leveraging what ADM does best and at our core. And it's allowing us to meet our customer needs around supply resiliency, price volatility, product consistency, but also just sustainable, providing a long-term sustainable supply chain into the future.
So that's a lot about, that's a lot. We know that ADM does a lot, and that's awesome. And that's all very focused on your business and ADM's vision. But what other factors, why is now the correct time? What happened in the industry? And it sounds like you did a lot of internal assessment, but why now for ADM? Why is this all consolidating? Why is ADM taking the next step at this point?
The number one reason is we had customers asking us to. We have over 1,000 people out in the marketplace talking to a lot of the large CPGs, talking to large dairies, talking to large farming industries. And the CPGs were out there saying, we need these solutions to come to the market. And we believe that ADM can help do this in a more sustainable way. You can bring the scale, which is going to address some of the cost challenges that they have. You can bring the sustainability as well as even the LCA rigor so that we can believe and trust in the information that we're seeing and the claims that these companies are making. You can bring the consistency and the quality that ADM is known for across the globe. And so when you have enough customers knocking on your door saying, can you please come along? Can you please join us in this journey? Which we were already doing from our own investigation anyway. It just seemed like now is the time to make that move. But again, it comes back to we really see this as next generation commodities. And as ADM, that's what we feel we do best. We do large really well. We do byproduct valorization really well. We understand what it takes to take the cost out of each step of the value chain, which is really important to this high value industry, right? I think there's a lot of great technologies out there. There's amazing science out there. But that doesn't mean the science is always meeting the market needs. And so we can really help connect what are those market needs, what are those customer needs, whether that's taste, it's performance, functionality, it's nutrition, but most importantly, cost, which is really going to drive the demand. And so we just felt we could play that connector role, that value chain role that really could potentially accelerate the commercialization of these important technologies.
And I think that's a really important point, and I love to hear you say that because in my role at IBRL, we work so much with startup companies, and we want them to be successful. We want them to get to the next level. but to produce an appreciable quantity of material. I mean, the last panel said it too. It takes resources, it takes capital, it takes infrastructure. And for so long, it has sort of seemed like the really large incumbents are kind of waiting, you know, seeing how it's going to go and how it's going to progress. So it's really exciting to hear that a company that has the capability and the depth to help those technologies actually get to market and to see commercial success, I think is critical for the success of the industry.
At the same time, we can't do it alone. And I think that I joined ADM 4.5 years ago, had actually been at DuPont prior to this in their industrial biotech business, so I've been in the biotech space for over 15 years prior to ADM. And when I came to ADM and realized the power of this value chain and the power of the scale of ADM, I really wanted to figure out how do we connect these two. And what I appreciate most about ADM is actually that they're really open and transparent about what they do well and what they don't do well. And they know they don't have all the answers, and we know that we don't actually have all the pieces of the puzzle. And so that's where this ecosystem approach, which I know came up in the last panel as well, but that's where partnerships and ecosystems are really what I believe and we believe are going to unlock the potential of this industry. And that can happen at different parts of the value chain. It can happen across the entire value chain. It can happen in the efforts that we're doing together around iFAB and bringing the different scale-up ecosystem pieces together to enable these startups to have the tools and the people and the knowledge to do so. There's so many different ways you could build these partnerships. And so that's really what the bulk of my time and energy is around, is figuring out what's the people, process, technology that's needed, and how do we put those clusters and groups together with a focused effort to make it happen.
So Allyson, I want to shift gears for a minute so that we can, address maybe some of the elephants in the room and then, get to talk more about the future and the vision. And I know I'm getting asked all the time about this disruption we've seen or the volatility we've seen. I know that everybody certainly has seen it from the government, but we've also seen some volatility in industry and in the food industry largely and broadly over the last few months. So what impact does this volatility have maybe on ADM's vision for its future, and kind of what is ADM thinking to address some of that maybe instability?
I think ADM has been around the block for a long time. It's been about 120 years now. We've seen a lot of instability, a lot of volatility in the market. We've overcome that, and that's actually been one of our strengths. I think through lots of war and turmoil, we've always been there. We've been able to move large agriculture inputs around the globe at a good price so we can continue feeding the world and providing health and nutrition. So we're going to lean in on our core and lean in on our legacy and double down, right? This is what ADM does well. Now, perhaps we are facing some, downturn in the agriculture markets. We're seeing some cost challenges. And so, yeah, we do need to simplify a little bit. We need to streamline in certain areas, but it's only so that we can invest where we can have impact. And it's only so that we can continue to grow and feed the world in a way that's going to be meaningful and more nutritious and more sustainable. So I think this is really just a hiccup for us, and we're not too concerned with the long-term outlook. But yeah, it's on everybody's mind, of course, but again, we've weathered 120 years. We're going to weather the storm as well, and I think, we're going to plan on seeing a better end of 25 and into 26.
And with so many state partners in the room too, can you speak to that presence and that in Illinois? And ADM is just such a force and just such a presence in Illinois in particular. And I know that you have a global footprint, but we're speaking to an Illinois audience here. So, just the future as
Illinois is our home. That's all I need to say. Illinois is our home. We have a zillion pipelines of projects that are for the area and in the region. And so, yeah, I continue to see a bright future here in Illinois.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So speaking of bright futures, I do want to spend a few minutes talking about this term that's been used so much already this morning, which is iFAB. Because, well, yeah, I'm on the, all right, yes, self-serving, but also ADM is a member of iFAB. So can you speak a little bit to why you chose to join the hub and what your interest, I guess, what ADM's interest is in what we are building?
Yeah, so I think it gets back to our original mission around how do we build or bring the building blocks to enable and unlock the next generation of ingredients, materials, and whatnot. And as we were looking at the capabilities that were out there in the market, the knowledge, the resources, and even just the technology, we didn't see what our partners were needing available on any sort of ready scale in order to do so. And I think it was mentioned on the previous panel that the time that it takes for these technologies to come to market. What did they say, 7 to 10 years? If you're investing 7 to 10 years, you got to make sure that when you get to that final stage of scale up, you can actually make that happen. And there just wasn't the means to do so. And we knew that ourselves. I mean, we have some capability, but we can't service a whole industry. And so we saw that as a significant gap that needed to be addressed. There had been a lot of money put in the front end of these technologies, so the strains were getting really optimized and into a great position in terms of performance. And now it's time to go to that next phase. And so you came at the right time with the right idea, right? But I think it was really the joint thinking of what does this industry need and how do we combine our collective know-how to make it happen. And given our geographical proximity, it was even better, right? We have you all here, we have Primient, and then we have ourselves. We really create that scale-up step process from desktop to pilot to commercial, all within 60 miles or 60 minutes of driving. That's pretty remarkable. Like, that's really hard to find in the world. You might be able to find it in Denmark because I think they've done a lot of investment, but in the United States, it's pretty much not there. So,
thank you for those points. And those are our talking points a lot. But I think it hits different, and it really sinks in when it is coming from our really large industry partners. I have a very specific lens as a University of Illinois employee, and that's great, and I love it. But hearing about it, the actual impact from people who are in the commercial space, who are doing this work, again, I think is just really important for people to hear that what we're trying to build is real.
it is absolutely real, and there's a lot of benefits for everyone who's participating, from a networking, from a learning and growing. This is still a very new industry, and there's a lot for us to gain from each other, and so bringing those different pieces together can accelerate that knowledge and learning curve. But also pipeline. I'm going to be honest, at the end of the day, it is about business, and there's a huge opportunity for future partnerships to come out of this engagement, from all the startups that are coming to you. And even I remember the first time we connected, you were like, oh yeah, we were already working with this partner of yours and this ventures partner of yours, and not naming names, but actually connecting the dots to say, we've already been doing this, now let's make it official and double down together.
Yeah. Well, and some that we can mention, I mean, everybody who's been talking about iFAB so far this morning, right? We both work with all of them.
In some capacity.
Yes,
indeed.
They're all collaborators, and we're all trying to address this challenge and address this industry collaboratively.
Yes, indeed.
So maybe I'm gonna switch this a little bit.
Let's
talk about what do you see the biggest challenges to be to both grow biomanufacturing, but then also to realize kind of the vision and the aspirations of iFAB. And we'll end on some, future prediction and aspirational goals too.
Okay. I'm going to bring it back a little bit to the broader precision fermentation in terms of challenges, and then we can kind of double click. I think for precision fermentation broadly, I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of amazing science out there, but it doesn't mean it's solving a market problem. We need to really gear these innovators towards market and customer needs, because it doesn't matter how cool the science is, if there's not a demand, it's not going to happen, right? So how do we connect the technology to the market and make sure that these microbes are being designed to service a need that's relevant from a functionality, from a taste, from a color, all the things that matter to customers and applications, but most importantly from a cost perspective. Cost is the number one key driver and the biggest hurdle to overcome. The second is around technology feasibility. I think it is such a long time horizon, and people need to be honest and realistic about it. Try not to bring people in too early, because if you bring them in early and get them excited and then you don't meet the timeline and milestones, you'll lose that excitement, you'll lose that trust. So how do you think about bringing folks in, being realistic, and then actually delivering on the milestones to build the confidence that this technology can be realized and scaled? So those are kind of just from a technology angle, kind of how I would talk about it.
Yeah.
If you want to talk about it from a manufacturing side, it's really investment. I mean, the capital it was mentioned already on the panel earlier, but the capital is significant. And so figuring out how to streamline that, be smart about it, and really leverage some of the new technologies to try to bring that cost down.
Yeah. So from a big, maybe talking about the infrastructure and the cost of the capital, I guess, can you speak to what that actually means? So how do companies make the decision to invest in capital? Why? Yeah, again, it is these huge price tags that are just exorbitant to startup companies. And so again, the organizations that have the resources to build really large infrastructure, it requires deep pockets, if we're being honest right now. So how do you make that decision, and how do other companies maybe look at what ADM is doing and investing in and decide to join as well?
There's a lot in there,
Yeah.
Beth, but we'll start with the beginning. What do companies look at? They look at return on invested capital. That's the number one, financial metric that I think is really used in manufacturing. And it gets tough when margins are slim, hard to get that return. And when you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars in capital, which some of these fermentation assets plus downstream processing, it starts to beef up. So ROIC, NPV is also one, net present value, looking at innovation and what that future value potential can be. And then IRR, just the return on investment. Those are kind of our general metrics of success. And we're always looking at if we can invest in 200 million here, or we can invest 200 million here. What's going to give us the greatest return? What's that time to value? And then how does it align with our strategic fit? So that's, in a nutshell where we go. Did you have a second part of that question?
Well, I was just asking a little bit about your peers, maybe, like what it seems, and I probably have a skewed perspective again because I work with ADM so frequently, but are there other things that large incumbents need to consider, maybe outside of ADM that are looking at this space, or to also get in the game? I'm not trying to create your competition.
No, it's fine.
But we've talked so much about how much of this we need, right? So yeah. How do other players get convinced?
I'm not sure. I'll be honest. But we have been engaging with them, right? Yeah. We've been engaging with them. We've been trying to do pre-competitive discussions around how can we activate this industry together, because we do still see it takes such an army to make it happen. But I do think they can remove the barrier of entry by entering into these ecosystems, by entering into these partnerships. Looking at partnerships with funding. There are different funding mechanisms, whether it's government funding, as we work together to source, there's philanthropic funding, there's sovereign wealth funding, there's various ventures funds that have that patient capital that are willing to help bring it along. But I think the most important thing people need to bring to the table is how do we create value together and maximize the total value together before they start trying to block off what is mine and what is yours. And that takes a bit of relationship investment and engagement, but really, really valuable and can go a long way in terms of seeing the reality of these technologies.
Okay, we have a couple minutes left.
I don't know where the time went.
I know. Well, I want to end on a really high note, all right? So we talked a little bit about this, but imagine a world in which all of iFAB's aspirations become a reality, right? Like it's a huge opportunity, but what do you see the region and ADM gaining if we are able to work together to achieve what we have told people we are going to do?
I think we're at the very beginning of this industry, and if we can make this partnership and ecosystem a success, we can really put Illinois on the map as being the leader in bioeconomy and bring in a diversity of capability and knowledge, attract the resources and the investment, and really just start the domino effect, which will lead to many more new ingredients, materials, food, nutrition, and whatnot that is brought to the world with more supply resiliency, better cost efficiency, greater consistency, and a sustainable long-term supply chain. So to me, that's success for everybody. I think everyone gets to benefit from that overall.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Allyson,
Thank
for
you.
joining me today.
Absolutely.
And yeah, thank you for participating in this year's AgTech Summit.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, everybody. Take care.